The universe had a beginning. For most of human history, the dominant view was that the universe had always existed. Ancient Greek philosophers argued for an eternal cosmos. Scientists in the early 1900s believed in a steady-state universe with no beginning. The idea that everything came from nothing seemed absurd. It contradicted what seemed logical and observable, until science caught up. Genesis chapter 1:1, written around 1400 BC, opens with a radical claim. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This wasn't poetic language or metaphor. It was a direct statement that time, space, and matter had a starting point. Hebrews 11:3 reinforces this, stating that what is seen was made from things not visible. The Bible declared a cosmic origin event millennia before any scientific framework existed to support it. In 1927, Georges Lemaitre proposed what would become the Big Bang Theory. By 1929, Edwin Hubble's observations confirmed the universe was expanding. If you reverse that expansion, everything converges to a singular point, a beginning. Secular scientists initially resisted this because it implied a creation event. The evidence, however, became undeniable. The universe had a starting point, just as Genesis claimed thousands of years earlier. The Bible didn't wait for telescopes or equations to declare this truth. It stated what science would later confirm. The cosmos is not eternal, it was spoken into existence. And that beginning points to something or someone beyond the physical realm, the expansion of the universe. Ancient cosmology viewed the heavens as fixed and unchanging. Stars were seen as permanent fixtures on a solid dome. The idea that space itself could stretch or grow would have seemed impossible. Even Einstein initially added a cosmological constant to his equations to keep the universe static. The notion of cosmic expansion was scientifically unthinkable, until the evidence forced a paradigm shift. The Bible uses a curious phrase in multiple passages. Isaiah chapter 40:22 says, God stretches out the heavens like a curtain. Isaiah 42:5 describes God as the one who created the heavens and stretched them out. Job 9:8 declares God alone stretches out the heavens. Jeremiah 10:12 repeats this imagery. Written between 700 and 1400 BC, these texts describe the heavens not as static, but as being actively stretched. This was a strange claim for an ancient text to make repeatedly. In 1929, Edwin Hubble discovered that galaxies were moving away from us in all directions. The farther away they were, the faster they receded. This wasn't objects moving through space, but space itself expanding. The universe was and is stretching. Modern cosmology now views cosmic expansion as fundamental reality. Dark energy continues to push galaxies apart at accelerating rates. What the Bible described as God stretching the heavens, science now observes as measurable cosmic expansion. The ancient writers had no telescopes or redshift data, yet they described a universe in motion being stretched out. Their language matches what we now know to be true. What do you think caused them to use this specific imagery in their comments about creation? The earth hangs in space on nothing. Ancient civilizations had elaborate explanations for what held the earth in place. Hindu cosmology placed it on the backs of elephants standing on a giant turtle. Greek mythology described Atlas holding up the sky. Norse legend spoke of a world tree supporting the cosmos. These weren't just stories, they reflected genuine attempts to answer a perplexing question. If the earth wasn't falling, something had to be holding it up. The idea that it hung on nothing seemed absurd and terrifying. Job 26:7, written approximately 2000 BC, makes a stunning declaration. He stretches out the north over empty space and hangs the earth on nothing. No elephants, no pillars, no cosmic supports, just empty space. This was a wildly counterintuitive claim for the ancient world. Every culture around ancient Israel imagined physical foundations or supports. Yet Job describes the earth suspended freely in a void, held by no visible means. It wasn't until the scientific revolution that humanity grasped gravitational mechanics. Newton's laws explained how objects could orbit in space without support. We now know Earth orbits the Sun at 67,000 miles per hour, held in place by gravity, not physical structures. Astronauts have photographed our planet floating in the blackness of space. There are no pillars, no foundations, no supports. It hangs on nothing, exactly as Job described thousands of years before telescopes or physics. The ancient world had every reason to imagine supports beneath the earth. Yet Job stood alone in declaring it hung on nothing. That knowledge didn't come from observation or experiment. The earth is round. For centuries, the flat earth model dominated human understanding. Ancient maps showed edges where the world ended. Sailors feared sailing too far and falling off. Even educated people assumed the earth was a flat plain covered by a dome. The idea of a spherical earth hanging in space would have seemed ridiculous. How could people on the bottom not fall off? This belief persisted across cultures and centuries, shaping navigation, warfare, and philosophy. Isaiah 40:22, written around 700 BC, describes God as sitting above the circle of the earth. The Hebrew word used is chug, which can mean circle, sphere, or roundness. Some scholars debate whether this implies a full sphere or just a circular disk. However, the context matters. Isaiah also describes God stretching out the heavens, suggesting a three-dimensional cosmology. Job 26:10 mentions God inscribing a circle on the face of the waters at the boundary between light and darkness, likely describing the terminator line visible only on a sphere. These passages hint at a round earth centuries before it was scientifically accepted. Greek philosophers like Pythagoras and Aristotle proposed a spherical earth around 500 BC, but this remained debated. It wasn't until Magellan's circumnavigation in the 15s that the sphere was proven beyond doubt. Today, we see Earth's curvature from aircraft and satellites. We know it's an oblate spheroid slightly flattened at the poles. The Bible's description, while not using modern scientific language, pointed toward this reality long before humanity had the tools to confirm it. The writers of Scripture described a round earth when flat cosmologies dominated their world. They had no satellites, no global voyages, no photographs from space. Yet their words align with what we now know to be true. The hydrological cycle. Ancient peoples observed rain, rivers, and seas, but couldn't explain how the system worked. Many cultures believed gods poured water from jars in the sky. Others thought the ocean was simply the endpoint where water vanished forever. The connection between evaporation, condensation, and precipitation wasn't understood. Water appeared and disappeared mysteriously. The cycle that sustained all life on Earth remained hidden behind superstition and mythology. No coherent scientific model existed to explain it. The Bible describes the water cycle with surprising accuracy. Ecclesiastes 1:7 states, "All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again." Job 36:27-28 explains that God draws up drops of water which distill as rain from the mist. The clouds drop down and pour rain on mankind abundantly. Amos 6 describes God calling for the waters of the sea and pouring them out on the earth. These passages, written between 1000 and 400 BC, outline evaporation, cloud formation, precipitation, and runoff. The complete hydrological cycle, captured in ancient text. It wasn't until the 17th century that scientists like Pierre Perrault and Edmund Halley formally described the water cycle through experimentation. They measured rainfall, evaporation, and river discharge to prove water circulated. Modern hydrology now maps every stage. Solar energy evaporates water, it rises as vapor, cools into clouds, falls as precipitation, collects in rivers, and returns to the ocean. The Bible described this process accurately thousands of years before instruments could measure it. These ancient writers had no weather satellites, no spectrometers, no atmospheric science. Yet they described the endless circulation of water with precision. Their words weren't guesses. The vast number of stars. To the naked eye, ancient observers could see perhaps 3,000 to 5,000 stars on a clear night. Early astronomers attempted to count and catalog them. Ptolemy's star catalog listed about 1,000 stars. Hipparchus counted around 850. For millennia, humanity believed the stars were countable and limited in number. They seemed like fixed lights on a celestial dome, finite and mappable. The idea that stars were innumerable would have seemed like exaggeration. You could see them all if you tried hard enough. Genesis 22:17 records God's promise to Abraham. I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Jeremiah 33:22 declares that the host of heaven cannot be numbered, nor the sand of the sea measured. These passages, written between 1400 and 600 BC, claim the stars are beyond counting. This wasn't obvious to ancient people. From their perspective, stars were few enough to track and name. Yet Scripture insisted they were innumerable, like grains of sand, an impossible multitude. Modern astronomy has shattered the ancient counts. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, contains an estimated 100 to 400 billion stars. The observable universe holds roughly 2 trillion galaxies. That means approximately 200 billion trillion stars exist within our view alone. The number is so vast it becomes meaningless to the human mind. We cannot count them. We cannot even properly imagine the scale. The Bible's comparison to sand grains turns out to be startlingly accurate. Both are essentially infinite from a human counting perspective. The writers of Genesis and Jeremiah declared stars uncountable when every visible star could be tracked. They had no telescopes, no concept of galaxies, no understanding of cosmic scale. Ocean currents and paths in the seas. For most of maritime history, sailors viewed the ocean as a chaotic, unpredictable expanse. Waves moved randomly. Winds shifted without pattern. The sea was a dangerous mystery to be feared and respected. Ancient navigation relied on coastlines and stars, not understanding of water movement. The idea that the ocean had organized paths and highways seemed impossible. Water was fluid, formless, constantly changing. How could there be roads in something with no solid ground? Psalm 8:8, written around 1000 BC by King David, contains a curious phrase. It mentions the fish of the sea, all that swim the paths of the seas. Paths in the seas. Not chaos, but roots. Not randomness, but order. David wasn't a sailor or oceanographer. He was a shepherd turned king in a landlocked region. Yet he described the ocean as having paths, as if invisible highways ran through the waters. This was a strange claim with no apparent basis in his experience or culture. In the 1800s, Matthew Fontaine Maury, a U.S. naval officer, reportedly became intrigued by this passage. He began systematically studying ocean behavior, collecting data from ship logs. His work led to the discovery of consistent ocean currents and circulation patterns. The Gulf Stream, the Kuroshio Current, the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, these massive rivers within the ocean follow predictable paths. Modern oceanography has mapped these currents in detail. They act as highways for marine life and shipping routes. The ocean isn't chaos. It has paths exactly as the psalm described. David had no ships, no instruments, no access to global maritime data. Yet he wrote of paths in the seas 1,000 years before science mapped them. His words pointed to an order beneath apparent chaos. Life is in the blood. Ancient medical practices were often brutal and misguided. Bloodletting was common for centuries, draining patients of the very thing keeping them alive. Doctors believed disease could be released by removing blood. Cuts, leeches, and veins were opened regularly. Kings and peasants alike were bled for fevers, headaches, infections. George Washington likely died from excessive bloodletting during his final illness. The medical community didn't understand that blood was the carrier of life itself. They saw it as one fluid among many, no more critical than phlegm or bile. Leviticus 17:11, written around 1400 BC, makes a definitive statement. For the life of a creature is in the blood, not the heart, not the breath alone, but specifically the blood. Leviticus 17:14 repeats this. The life of every creature is its blood. These weren't casual observations. They were foundational statements about physiology. God told the Israelites that blood carried life, which is why it was sacred and central to atonement sacrifices. This understanding set apart the Hebrew medical code from surrounding cultures. Modern medicine confirms this ancient truth. Blood carries oxygen to every cell through hemoglobin. It transports nutrients, hormones, and immune cells. It removes carbon dioxide and metabolic waste. Without blood circulation, cells die within minutes. Brain death occurs in 4 to 6 minutes without oxygenated blood. Blood is literally the carrier of life. Transfusions save millions annually. Blood tests diagnose disease because blood reflects the body's entire state. What Leviticus declared 3,400 years ago, modern medicine now teaches in every medical school. Life is in the blood. The Bible continues to invite investigation, not just from theologians, but from scientists, historians, and anyone willing to look closely at what was written long ago. If you like our content, consider subscribing, or some topics didn't made in the list or topics that you want us to feature, please leave in the comments. The ancient words still speak, and sometimes they speak truths we're only beginning to understand.